Welcome to What's on Your Plate podcast. I'm Sarah, your host. Today, I am honored to share the mic with a brave and courageous soul who literally wrote the book on how she not only became fully integrated in her own life by finally choosing herself, but now she also helps other people share the stories that bring light to who they are as well. Before you join us and listen to this amazing conversation, please do make sure you have hit the follow or subscribe button so that you never miss an important episode like this one. Of all the clicks you make today, make sure that that's one of them. Without further ado, I'm excited to share the discussion with Jillian Abbey. But I am excited to be here with you today, and I did love your book, and it was just beautiful and inspiring and just so wonderfully written. It was just everything. So
Well,
I really
thanks.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
That makes my writer heart like so happy and fuzzy and like fulfills the purpose of why I wanted to create the book. And also I think our conversation would be so much more awkward if you're like, wow, that was special. So I'm glad you liked it. That's good. That's helpful.
Yes, yes, absolutely. There wasn't anything not to like, so I thought it was a great. For one thing, it was just written so well, and then also just I love hearing people's stories. Sorry, adjust something here. I love hearing people's stories, and yours was just quite the tale.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, awesome. This is going to be amazing today. I'm here with author Jillian Abbey, coming to us from a journey of constant reinvention, weaving together a tapestry of diverse experiences. The most recent transformation being coming out as a lesbian and moving on to writing a memoir, Perfectly Queer. It's amazing. Again, by the way, I can't wait to talk about that. She has since become a ghostwriter, helping other people tell their own stories and gain the empowerment that comes from doing so. Welcome, Jillian.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me.
This is just so exciting. And again, just right off the bat for the watchers of podcasts, Perfectly Queer is available. Yay, we both have one.
Happy odds.
This was a wonderful read. So just thank you for putting that beautiful magic out into the world and sharing your story. We're gonna for sure, dig into just how you got to where you are now and how it was not at all simple. Like the beginning of this conversation is making it sound like it was, right? Like, oh, she just all of a sudden, just made this choice. For sure, people need to dig into the book, but take us back a little bit and just tell us a little bit about how things kind of started to transform for you.
Sure. Well, so at the highest level, this book is my memoir. It's about me coming out as a lesbian at 38 years old and the impact that that had on myself and how I felt and how I walked through the world, and my relationships with my family, with my children that I homeschooled, with my spouse, a man, my first real boyfriend who I'd been with since freshman year of college, and unraveling a life that I had worked so hard to build as a perfectionist and a people pleaser to make everyone around me happy and to fulfill all those stories we hear of what it means to live a perfect life,
Mm.
only to reach that point of feeling like I had attained everything that I could or should attain and still feeling empty inside. And so it really is a book about that exploration of who we are as opposed to maybe who people tell us we should be, or even who we tell ourselves we should be. And then lastly, it's permission to course correct when
Mm.
things don't feel right.
I love all that so much. What really stood out for me in your book that was just a lot to like take in and had to be a lot for you to sit with over the years was just the duration of time that you denied yourself. Early on, even like in your adolescence, as you were kind of realizing that you weren't attracted to the same people that your girlfriends were attracted to, you weren't interested in boys like they were, and how your mom was concerned about that as you were growing older. And, there was just this disinterest. And even that young, kind of having that knowing and that awareness. And then it just becoming stronger as you became a woman and got married and were a mom and just all the different parts of that timeline. And you knew deep down it seemed like for a long time.
Yeah. My sport when I was in middle school and high school was springboard diving, and I feel like that's kind of how I approach a lot of things in life. Like it's all in. And so that's kind of how I was with my own identity as well, and trying to create this, trying to be the child that I thought my parents wanted me to be. I mentioned in the book that at one point, and it was really an off the cuff comment that my mom doesn't even remember making, but I had stored it in my lips somewhere in a little mental pocket. She said when I was in high school, well, I would never want a gay child. Life is
Mhm.
just harder for them. And I stored that piece away for whatever reason, probably knowing because, I mean, my feelings around queerness date back to about third grade, is the first time I remember looking at a girl. Her name was also Jill. And just thinking that there was something different about her. Like she was the most beautiful being I had ever seen, and I just wanted to be near her.
Mhm.
And it was just that first noticing of like, this is a different feeling that I have towards someone. Um, but I didn't have language for it. I didn't have representation of it in my life. I didn't know what it meant. And so, yeah, the book goes through a lot of these small little occurrences that happened during my life, but they were so small. And I was so committed to the narrative of being that perfect daughter that I did everything that I could to not come out for the longest time. And I think that's actually what compelled me to write the book, because a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but there are people who trivialize the coming out experience and how traumatic the coming out experience can be, even when you're an adult, even when you have supportive friends, even if you have a huge pride parade in your
Mhm.
coming out is a big deal. And the reason why I wanted to have the book is because it was such a process. There was so much internalized homophobia that I had to work through, thoughts about myself. And part of why the book is called Perfectly Queer is because for the longest time as a perfectionist, I viewed my queerness as the imperfect thing about me. And so that's why it was so special and important to me to title the book Perfectly Queer, because those are the two words that I never thought I would see side by side together. But yeah, it was
Wow.
a
Yeah, I love that. I didn't know that about the title of the book. So thank you for sharing that. It just really makes it that much more special that there's such a meaning for you behind those two words paired together. Um, and I just love that. What you shared about your mom's comment earlier on in your life, it's just that idea that there's so many things that impact us along our journeys in life. And sometimes we don't realize what it is until it's hindsight, and we can't even understand why it was important or why something sticks in our heads. But just that one little comments and you carrying it with you for all those years, I'm sure when you started to have more of a realization, just kept popping up in your thoughts as something that was making what you felt about yourself feel wrong.
yeah, it was always a balance of, as I would come to terms more with my queerness and like, okay, I definitely am attracted to women. And also, I'm in a good marriage, in a good relationship with a man who I love very much, I cared about very much. Um, it was always this balance of what's what's worth giving up What has more weight in my life? What can I carry with me and what can I let go of? And so that's a really hard thing when your identity, when who you know you are inside is in conflict with the life that you're living, especially if the life that you're living is, quote unquote, good or comfortable. I think there were a lot of people who gave me flack for putting myself first instead of considering all the people around me and, questioning your life that you had wasn't that good enough. Like, what do you think your new life is going to be like? And I was like, thank you for piling on the fear. I have no idea what my next life is going to be like. Um, but I can't go on with this incongruent inside and outside.
That had to be so much to unpack and to have just so much fear around you by other people who it wasn't even their story. It wasn't their life. Some people would be more intimately affected, probably your mom for one, right? I know she had a lot of feels about your coming out. We can get to that for
Thoughts?
sure. Um, but something to say about that too. You mentioned in your book, you had a conversation with somebody who helped you kind of understand that your coming out, while you do know it affects other people, it probably affects parents differently. Parents who come to the realization or are informed that they are parents of somebody who is gay, and maybe yesterday they had no idea that that was true, kind of thing. So it's like a shift for them too, that I think you described in your book that you had a little bit more maybe appreciation for your mom in terms of what she was going to, or maybe that's not the right word, but you held it more gently.
Definitely. So, my dear friend, Dr. Trisha Peterson, she was the one I had the conversation with. She has her PhD in family studies, and I'm so grateful for the conversation that we had because things were rough between my mom and I.
Yeah.
And almost my entire life, my mom and I were very close. We had a very close relationship. I look back on my childhood and say it was a great childhood. It was a very happy childhood. And so it was really hard to know that I was not only coming out, not only going to be going through the divorce process, having to figure out my income, having to, split my time with my children. Almost every aspect of my life was changing. And also, my mom was so upset by
Mm.
the decision I had made. And that was really hard as well. And there were a lot of hurtful things said. There was a lot more that didn't go into the book because it was just, our private conversations and interactions
Mhm.
that we didn't kind of have like
Mhm.
beat over the head in the book. But things were absolutely strained. And there were a lot of people in my life who said, Jill, just cut her off. Like, you don't need that in your life. And I know this is a message that we hear that when there are toxic people or unhealthy relationships, that sometimes we do need to create that boundary and we need to end the relationship. But with my mom, I felt like rather than a toxicity, it was just we were coming from two totally different vantage points. We saw life in two totally different ways. And I hoped that at least if we could keep some tether and some connection and keep working at it, that maybe we could get some common ground eventually. Um, and so what Dr. Trisha mentioned to me, and she is the mother of an LGBTQ child herself, and also was a very involved member of the LDS Church, the Mormon Church. So she felt it. What happens when a child comes out and it isn't just the child's identity, but it becomes part of the parent's identity as well. And the
Mhm.
child, like in my case, I had a decade to prepare for my coming out. I did it on my own timing. I wasn't outed by anyone. But for her, it kind of came out of the blue. She didn't have that time to prepare. And then she did not have the social circle around her to support her through it.
Right.
And I did.
For
So
sure, that can make a big difference.
absolutely. And I think that's why there are people when they come out where their relationships become strained and it can be so hard and so frustrating. And you want to say, why don't they understand? Or why can't they just love me for who I am? And sometimes it's a matter of time and space and
Mm.
understanding that they have their own process. And hopefully they will do the work too to bring that relationship back together. But it takes time. It's not a quick and easy, like, and we're friends again. Let's go get matching tattoos. Like, no,
Yeah.
it's such a process for everyone involved. So if I need permission to be able to change and grow and evolve, I need to gift that to the people in my life as well.
That's just amazing that you were able to come to that realization. And I'm sure because of that, it had a huge part in just healing some of that between you and your mom. And wasn't Dr. Trish the same person who said that her conversation with her own daughter went easier when her daughter came out because of
That
what
was
she had?
another friend of
Oh,
mine.
that
So
was a
apparently
different friend.
all of my friends, their children are all coming out now. And no, but it was great because yeah, so in the book there was another friend of mine who I mentioned to her that I was coming out and
Yeah.
why and how and what would be changing in my life. And she was so amazingly supportive and then came to me later and said, "You're not going to believe this, but my daughter just came out to me." And I'm so grateful that we had the conversation we did because it allowed me to think through it and I had more of the language and um, it helped her feel better in the experience to be able to support her own child knowing what I had gone through. And that was one of those pieces where I realized that sharing our stories, sharing these
Yeah.
vulnerable parts of our life can be a lifeline for another person. I'm not saying you have to, like, everyone has to go out and write their memoir. It's not for everybody. But even just being able to share in smaller circles and with individuals what's real and what's happening in your life and what's hard and how you're getting through it can be a lifeline for someone else.
Absolutely. I think that's so amazing too. I mean, you were already having a ripple effect in just helping people understand maybe and accept and just come into conversations a little bit more gently. Even then, before you started actually becoming a ghostwriter, being an author, a blogger, a podcaster yourself, right? Doing things more formally to do so, it was already happening early on just because of the conversations you were having. So I agree, like the way that we share our stories in whatever format, it's so important.
Yeah. And I don't want to disillusion any of your listeners here that I did this all perfect from the get-go. I had a lot of messy conversations. I had a lot of
Sure,
things that I said and did that I was like, oh my gosh, that was a disaster. I wish I
sure.
could take that back. Jack Daniel's Honey Whiskey played a very big role in my life and part of my coming out process. And it's part of growing and learning too that um, there's going to be mistakes and there's going to be messiness to it.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of process, a lot of therapy of just even forgiving myself and working through some of the guilt and the shame that
Hmm.
comes along with knowing that you have to hurt other people who you love because you're still making the best choice out of all of your options available. So, in my situation, um, I had to make the choice. It wasn't just, do I want to come out because I want to start a new relationship and try dating women in the wild world of lesbian online dating? Um, like the choice wasn't so flippant. It was, do I stay in this relationship with a man I very much care about? and love, but for the next several decades, I know that I will be lying to him every time I look in his face. I know that I can't give love to him fully, like maybe another person could. And also, the other piece of that is, am I willing to go through the rest of my life not feeling fully integrated?
Mhm.
To know that I'm walking around missing a piece of myself. And so it was a hard choice to make of, am I going to choose myself or am I going to choose the comfort of everyone else around me? And knowing that choosing myself kind of goes so counter to our culture, especially for women and mothers nowadays, and knowing that choosing myself was going to hurt people that I loved so much was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And it was still the right choice, and I would still make it again, but uh, not easy peasy.
No. And I can't imagine anybody would be assuming that it was just this very like fluid, easy path. And whether you are coming out as gay, whether you are just deciding not to settle for something within a relationship or accept something that you don't like, right? If you've been doing it for a long time, like you were in a straight marriage and relationship for a long time, and then you decide you're not, and you're not going to settle for something, or you're not going to deal with this anymore, or you're going to come out as gay because you've known, whatever the hard thing is, um, it's really going to be uncomfortable, right? And it's really going to cause a lot of friction. And I think so what you said about disappointing other people or hurting other people in order to come into your own full integration, part of me goes to the thought of they will ultimately be better when you're better. That's really hard in the moment.
Yeah,
That's really hard to fully believe in the moment, but when you are who you are supposed to be, when you are that full integration of yourself, you're better for everybody, and then everybody else is better because of it. Have you
you
found that true?
you nailed it. Yes. And that's the thing I see, I talk to a lot of different women who are coming out later in life, but even if that's not your situation, if you're making any sort of identity change, whether that's a career
Hmm.
change, whether you're leaving your relationship with whoever it's with and starting something new, or you're moving to a whole new geography, whatever it is. Um, I find when we change our identities in any way, there's always resistance. There are people who are uncomfortable with the change. We may also be uncomfortable with the change.
Hmm.
But we also tend to be very short-term focused. And so in the short term, I was terrified of everything that I had to go through. I knew all the steps that were coming along the way. And at the same time, if I looked at the long term, I knew it was a path I had to take because the other path of staying hidden in my identity, of masking the rest of my life, that was ultimately the harder path. And so I always, when people are struggling through, well, what do I do? Do I make the change? Do I not make the change? We almost have to put the short term to the side a little bit and say, what is my vision for my life? Because we've got, we don't know how much time we have ahead of us, but likely we have a lot of years ahead of us. What road do you want to be on? Where do you want to end up? Can you stay on the path that you're currently on? And I think when we start evaluating in those kind of terms of where will I be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, making the choice that's right for us becomes a little bit easier.
Definitely. I could see that as being true. I feel like one of the biggest things that I hear women who are coming out later in life talk about is the kids.
Mm,
Like that's a lot of it, I feel like that really complicates things if you have children, um, and how that just complicates everything in terms of coming out later in life, especially. Most women that I have talked to that have been in the similar situation that you were have said that if it wasn't for the kids, if it was just them, it for sure would have happened sooner.
Yeah. I certainly don't want to feel that I'm placing any judgment around anyone for what they decide because ultimately people have people are going to choose what feels like the right and best thing for them in their unique circumstances in the moment. My now ex-husband and I considered staying together in our relationship, at least till they were out of the house, um, because we did get along. It wasn't like it was an
Mhm.
unhealthy household for them to be in. What ultimately changed it for me was a conversation, and it's one that I mentioned in the book with one of the kids' school teachers. And she mentioned that her husband's parents were getting divorced in their 70s because the mother finally said, I can't take his infidelity anymore. He's been cheating on me for so many years of our marriage. We're done. I'm done with it. And to hear from her that even as a grown adult with his own family, his own kids, the kind of unraveling that did to him, it just made me realize like divorce is always hard.
Mm.
It's hard if the kids are little. It's hard if the kids are big. It's hard if the kids are teenagers. It's hard if they're fully formed humans with their own families. In their case, the teacher's husband started to question everything in his life and his childhood and his parents' marriage. And it's like, well, what was real? What wasn't real?
Mm.
Did you really love each other? Um, and again, while I don't know that there's any perfect way to do it, in our situation, I feel like my children now have the best version of me. Like if we're not showing up
Mhm.
as our full selves, if we are not comfortable in our own bodies, if we're not comfortable with who we are, if we can't find joy in our own lives, it's really hard to impart that to them. And so I was that parent glued to my phone, doom scrolling all day long, just trying to get through the day.
Mhm.
And now I feel like life doesn't take as much effort. It's just, it's easier to exist. So I have more time for play, you know? So like today, my wife and I just got back from taking our teenage daughter out. We went downtown, we got a nice iced tea and toured around a bookshop, and just had some great conversation together. And it's like, at the time I was coming out, I didn't know this was part of my vision. I didn't know that this could be the future for my family and my kids. What they got is instead of two loving, supportive parents in their life, now they have four amazing, loving, supportive parents in their life.
I can't imagine the heaviness that must have been lifted off you when you did come into who you fully are and just that lightness that you talk about and just freeing up the time, the mental energy, I imagine, just was life-changing in and of itself.
For sure.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, and it's almost kind of scary to me. I don't know if it's funny or scary. I haven't really figured this out yet. I didn't realize that I was going through life in this wasn't diagnosed, but I believe in a state of depression. And eventually, at some point, it wasn't first when I came out. It definitely took some time to get through, but it was like I woke up one day and it was like I could finally see colors again. I could finally, like a fog had been lifted. Um, I would wake up in the morning and I no longer, there was a period of time where I would wake up, I'd open my eyes in the morning and think, oh no, I'm alive another day. Like I need to get through this day. And that became my norm for so long. And yet again, because of the perfectionism, I wouldn't allow myself to admit that there was even a problem. It was like, well, adulting is hard. wine mom culture, whatever. Like there are just so many things we hear about, like, well, life's just hard. And so I thought, okay, so life's just hard. And so when that fog lifted, and I felt like I finally had agency over my identity and agency over the direction of my life and how I was going to earn money, even though that was very unclear. How I was going to take care of my house, that was very unclear. So many things that I had to figure out, but eventually this beautiful clarity happened. And like you said, life just became so much easier. And I was like, wow.
Mm.
How do I not I want to scream from the mountaintops. Like if you're not feeling this, I want to help you get there. I don't know what it takes for every single person, but life doesn't have to be so hard. I think that was part of in writing the book. It was like if one person can read this and it helps them shift into the life that they feel whole in and aligned in and happy about, like imagine the effect that that has on everyone around them.
Right. Yeah, that just really makes me smile, everything that you just described there. And I think about the way you manifested the relationship with your now wife, the way you described that in the book, and kind of how that maybe that's how the journey of writing started for you. And you talk about writing being the cheapest form of therapy, um, but you manifested her.
I did, and it was so weird and so cool at the same time. Yeah, I talk about in the book that so I was in the wild world of lesbian dating and started by dating a friend of mine that coincidentally we both just happened to be single at the same time, and there was good and bad to it.
There was a reason for her, for
There
sure.
absolutely was. Yes. Um, but when after that relationship ended and we had split up and gotten back together so many times, and in the final time, I said to myself, I'm not doing this anymore. Like this is not, I didn't leave what I was just in to move into this. So let me
Mhm.
get clear on what I want because really I didn't even know what I was looking for. It was kind of like, okay, I'm a lesbian now. Where's the nearest available lesbian? Like, let's go lesbian together. I don't know how we do this. And so, for whatever reason, and it felt like such a strange exercise to do, but I got out my little notebook and I was like, I'm just going to write who my ideal person is. Like, I need some clarity here. What does she like to do? How does she spend her time? What is her personality like? Um, there were some things I wrote like she has the biggest smile that just like lights up a room. That she's into healthy eating and like we could do yoga together. That would be fun. And all these like little kind of random things. But if I was gonna craft my dream life, I was doing it here in the notebook. Went back to the online world of dating and quickly realized that the people I was swiping right on and going on dates were nice people, but they weren't aligned with that vision of really what I wanted in my life. And so I almost gave up on dating until finally that giant smile that lit up the screen came on my app. And I was like, one last swipe. And so I swiped right. We went on one date. It was so incredibly amazing. And the problem with my manifesting is I forgot to mention geography. And so we finished our first date, and then she had to hop back on a plane because she lived 936.3 miles away. And I said, of course, I forgot that piece in the exercise. Our last words together before we left was, "We'll figure it out," And now here we are, years later, and we're married, and we figured it out. Ta-da!
It really does paint the picture that it all went so easy, right?
But I know, I'm like, yeah, maybe I need a book too, like 52 ways that I effed up this situation. But really, I mean, I also consider myself so lucky and so grateful because this could have gone a lot of different pathways. And I felt like because I was listening to my intuition for the first time in my life and just really
Mm,
trusting that I don't know how this is going to work out, but I just trust it's going to work out, things would align in ways that I could have never anticipated. I could not have come up with the plan of how this would go. I couldn't have come up with a plan that anyone in the universe would be reading a book about a middle-aged suburban mom driving a minivan, that now this book's available worldwide, and that I get messages from people who say, I just reconnected with my parent over your book.
mm,
Or my dad came out and left our family when I was a kid, and now I understand more of what he may have been going through. Um, Somebody who said, the queerness, the queer part of me was I moved from the column of things I don't like about myself to things I love about myself. I never could have imagined what would have come out of sharing this story and other people finding themselves in it. And I just hope for them that they don't latch on too hard to my story and trying to recreate what happened here, but just leaving themselves open to their own possibilities and just trust that like you do have an inner guidance in you. And if you pay attention to it, it is really amazing what can happen. But yeah, there's hard.
for sure. But the word that keeps coming back to me was one you used earlier, just a moment ago, is intuition and finally listening to your intuition. And I think that's just really ingrained in us not to do. We're taught to listen to the fear instead of the intuition and be the people pleaser and the one that doesn't disrupt anything and the one that overachieves and all of those toxic types of traits that we think are good growing up, putting others first before yourself, even your true happiness and purpose, right? But all of that is denying that intuition. All of that is shoving that farther down. And when you do finally start to listen to it, and maybe you hear it for a while, right? You heard it for a while, but you kept denying it, you weren't listening, and so many of us can relate to that. I mean, I just feel like there needs to be like a societal shift no matter what it is that you're denying about yourself. But once you start to embrace it and listen and hear fully, it is truly amazing what happens. And I have to believe that a lot of how things turned out for you is because you just listened. You just surrendered to finally who you were supposed to be and what the universe was telling you.
Right. And along the way, like listening to your intuition means having to say no sometimes. And listening
Mm-hmm.
to your intuition means having to set boundaries, which I was horrible at. I mean, gosh,
Yeah.
the amount of money I've spent on coaching just to set a boundary and keep a boundary because I was so used to not doing that as a people pleaser. It was like, whatever you want, I'll be that person. I'll show up for you. Yes, yes, yes to everything.
Mm, yeah.
But also, so I started out my career as a CPA and I lived very much in my head and not in my body. That I attribute partly to why it took me so long to come out in life is because I was so disconnected from my physical body that I couldn't even necessarily discern what felt good to me and what didn't. But when we live in our heads too, for me personally, I don't feel like intuition comes from the mind.
Mm,
Like it's my ego voice that I get in my mind.
mm-hmm.
Intuition is like a gut sensation or a heart
Mm-hmm.
sensation or in my breathing. And it really honestly wasn't until I hit what felt like my rock bottom where I was like, I don't know if I can keep going through life right now. Like, I don't have any light left in me. I don't know if I can stay here on this planet. That's when I really started hearing intuition because at that point, here I am a perfectionist and I'm just feeding off what my ego tells me my whole life of how to be perfect. And when you hit rock bottom, there's nothing perfect about you. And the ego doesn't want to, it has nothing to say. And so when that voice got quiet, that's when I feel like my intuition was like, it's going to be okay. Right now sucks. And also, this is temporary. And so, but I mean, intuition, it's such a hard thing. I love talking about it because it is so important. I totally agree that we need ways to tap back into our bodies and our intuition and our knowing and how to recognize that. And also, I tried to intellectualize intuition. I mean, I remember going out and buying a book on it because I was like, I don't hear the voice. Maybe I can make that happen if I read a book about it. Uh, Spoiler alert, no, the book did not help me find my intuition. It just fed my ego even more. But anyways, and so that's the thing too, is like I really feel like we all hit some sort of rock bottom in our life at some point where things get really hard. Um, if we're willing to go and do the scary thing, at some point life may unravel, but there can be such a gift in that because those are the times where we figure out who we really are. And when you got nothing there, you can only go up from there. And so I felt like, okay, maybe it feels like life crumbled apart. I described it like a sandcastle on the beach where the waves just kept coming in and pulling it apart, pulling my life away. And it's like, well, now I've got this blank surface to start with. What do I want it to look like? And realizing that was really powerful and motivating and hope filled to move forward.
And now you're helping other people with your writing, with the ghost writing,
Yeah.
telling their own stories. I really love that you've created that from your own pain. Like you've really taken your pain and created it into something not beautiful for yourself. You've transformed it for your own life, but now there's such a deeper purpose in it that you're sharing with other people to share what is heavy for them and what is in their lives that just needs to be shared so it has a ripple effect. I'd love to hear more about that and just the writing that has really transformed you into who you are now.
Yeah. Well, I have yet to meet a person who doesn't have a fascinating life. There are a lot of people who say to me, "Oh, I couldn't have a book. I'm just a fill in the blank." But
Mm.
really, if you get to know someone, if they're willing to open up and share, there's such incredible wisdom and unique wisdom that comes from each of our lived experiences.
Mhm.
And I think through my own writing experience, I've been able to see firsthand how people can be so loved and held and seen and supported when we share the hard and ugly and, disastrous times of our lives, but like when we can show the growth through that as well,
Mhm.
that we can always find people who are about to go through the same or are going through the same. And our story becomes the one of hope of there is there's a way to get through this. And so it is so freaking awesome right now that my career is helping other people get their stories into the world. And it's really interesting to me because regardless of who I'm writing for, whether this person is a high up executive for a major company or they're a wellness leader or whatever, almost every single person comes to me and says, I don't know if my story matters. I don't know if anyone wants to hear my story. Or they'll say, I'm not even a writer. And I'm like, newsflash, I'm not either. Like, I was an accountant. So it's a lot of unpacking these stories that we tell ourselves about what is a writer, who's
Mhm.
allowed to write and share their stories. And like, do
Mhm.
you have to be a famous celebrity or an all-star athlete in order to have your memoir in the world? Maybe a few decades ago, yes, you had to be that person or you weren't getting published. But I think one of my favorite reviews about my book is where the person said, I loved this book because the story was so ordinary. Like it was so relatable. It
It
wasn't the
is.
Olympic athlete that, or whatever. I mean, it wasn't an unattainable path to try and follow. It was like, this could be anyone in my life. This could be me in these aspects. And I thought that was so cool that like the strength of the story is how relatable it is, not how out there um, it is. And so I think for that's so important for people to realize that we do have such healing ability in our stories, and maybe writing is not your modality. Maybe it's the spoken word, maybe it's art, maybe it's music, maybe it's just sitting down and having that coffee with a friend and being willing to be vulnerable about who you are. But I work every day with people whose lives and stories and experiences and hardships are changing the world for the better. And that's just amazing.
It is amazing. I just love it. I just love what you're doing. It just really makes me smile to think that from your story, that is something that other women can see in themselves is now pouring out into the world in a way that is helping other people find their brave. It is just, it's extraordinary.
It's freaking awesome. I mean, I just I cannot get over the fact that this is life now. And um, again, results may vary. But my, my life didn't start out this way, and my life could have absolutely not ended up this way if I would have gone along with the life that everyone else told me would be the perfect life for me. And so, for whatever reason, whatever luck or circumstances or angels or energy or whatever you want to call it in life, all of the happenings that happened to get me here, I'm just, I'm so grateful for. And the more that I can share that message, the more I can encourage people to like lean into the life that they desire. I just want the world to know. And if you need me to write your book too, happy to help edit.
Right. Yes. And your book is just so fun and easy to read. I mean, the topic itself is something that makes it really just magnetic to want to read, right? But also the way that you write, your style of writing is you just want to keep turning the page. You don't want to put it down. That's what I experienced anyways. And I just kept thinking about that. As I was reading through the book, it was like I was almost having a conversation, where it could just feel like you were just having give and take with somebody almost, just the way that you wrote it. So I loved it.
Thank you. I love that you say that because that's something that I've heard from people too, that they're like, I feel like I know you already. Like we've
Yeah.
been sitting down and you just spewed your life story to me, around a campfire or at the coffee shop or whatever. I love that. It's been so cool connecting with people all over the world
Hmm.
now. And just, I always wanted close relationships in my life throughout my entire life. And I had, some good friendships growing up, but a lot of my relationships were at such a surface level of
Yeah.
how's the weather today? What are you doing this weekend? Kind of things. Now people know more about me and my body and things that I have done than I ever would have anticipated. But the benefit to that is I have such closeness with so many people now. And I love when people are like, can I ask you a question? If it's too vulnerable, don't worry. And I was like, oh, honey, I talk about the condition of my vagina in this book. Like, what? No, ask your question, please. Um, it's been such an incredible way to connect with people. And yeah, so I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful that I didn't overthink it. I wrote again, like you mentioned, I wrote because it was the cheapest form of therapy. I never thought it would be a book because I told myself, well, I'm not really a writer. And I'm just glad that I continued through and the story did get out there and now I can serve others in doing the same.
Yeah. So awesome. It's just also amazing the way that this happened for you and just what you're doing now with it. And whether it is, you know, the book, you end up in my inbox periodically with the blog and just the beautiful things that you have to say with that. So everybody should sign up for that as well. For sure, the links to your site and how to connect with you and how to explore working with you for sure will be in the show notes. Tell us what you want us to go away thinking about today.
If I could leave you with one message, it's just that I have so much love for every single person who is here and is listening to this right now. I don't believe anything is by chance. Whatever it is in your life, I hope that you are able to create a vision for what you want and what feels like the most whole, fulfilling, love-filled, joy-filled, satisfying life because that's what we need more in this world right now. Our whole, full people who are just showing up and living. Um, so thanks for being here and thanks for being a part of this. I have goosebumps now. I love you all so much. Thank you.
This has just been this has been a great conversation, and I'm just so glad that I was introduced to you and that I got to read your book and just experience your work and the magic you're putting out in the world. So thank you, Jill, very much for being here with me today.
Thank you for sharing your magic. If I can make one last PSA about this book, though, one thing I love to say to people is that if you don't have to be a murderer to read murder mysteries, you don't have to be queer to read this book. I really hope that people will look beyond the rainbow and realize that it's the human story at the end of the day, and we can all connect to that. Gay, straight, cis, trans, whatever you all are welcome here.
All are absolutely welcome here, and that could not have been more beautifully said. So thank you for sharing that. Life doesn't have to feel so hard or take so much effort if we are living fully integrated as who we are supposed to be. And sometimes sharing the most vulnerable parts of ourselves can help others have the courage to do just that. What a beautiful gift this conversation was. If, like me, you found Jill and her book inspiring, follow her on socials. The link to her amazing book is in the show notes, along with all ways to stay connected and work with her. If you are in support of this space, please leave a comment or review the platform. Share the episode on your socials or even just with a friend. Your support of this space is everything, and it helps keep it sustainable. Looking forward to being back again with you very soon. Until next time, friends.